Blog Talk Radio.
Dedicate our life to this sport. We do thousands of sit-ups in camp. We run hundreds of miles, for the ones that take it serious. And we just dedicate ourselves fully to our craft, man. We watch tape. We have attitude. We rooting, and we go into that fight to lay it on the line.
Minnesota basketball fans, the Living in Loserville podcast returns, and of course we cover everything to do with the Minnesota Timberwolves and the Minnesota Gophers. I'm your host, Chris Carlson. My co-host, Aaron Miller, will be joining in very shortly. Since we last talked last week, right around the same time, of course, we had the Thibodeau. Thibodeau, is it a thimble? Who cares how you say his name? He's gone. Tibbs was gone. We talked all about it. We laughed. We cried. It was better than cats. Speaking of cat, just thought about that. This dude has been an all-purpose player. However, especially if you look at the last 10 or 12 games, however, those fall issues are even more than I thought. Once I started kind of digging into the stats, Wiggins has been unleashed. Go figure. Tibbs is gone. First game without Tibbs, he goes for 40. Of course, we'll kind of review the recent stretch of 2-1 since the last pod. We'll talk, we're not going to go quarter by quarter, talk about the 2-1 record there, see where we're at. We're also going to preview the upcoming schedule, including Tuesday's game at Philadelphia, and we know that means a whole lot with that guy, Jimmy Butler. We're going to try to stop him from getting buckets. I say we just step on his ankle, but that's just me. I'm old school, I guess. And then, of course, on the Gopher side of things, poor play down the stretch of that Maryland home game, and the biggest thing, free throws, missed free throws at that, were the main reason for that much winnable game. It was a very winnable game at Maryland. We had a good chunk of that game. We had the lead. We closed really well in the second quarter, first half. We also bounced back against Rutgers. Speaking of foul problems with Cat, our guy Murphy has been in a whole heap of foul problems. Coffee remains aggressive. McBrayer clutch on both ends. We'll also we'll talk a little bit about of course, the Maryland and the Rutgers game. We have two games coming up, right? Preview next two games. We'll definitely kind of talk it all through. We're not huge X and O's guys. We're not going to sit there and bore you to death with quarter by quarter, minute by minute talk. It's more of a fan perspective with a little bit of X's and O's. By the way, Okogie. We're going to give our thoughts on Okogie in the starting lineup and just in general as a rookie as well. So we're going to get into this in just a moment. However, if this is your first time listening to the Living in Loserville podcast, it can be, found right here, streaming live on blogtalkradio.com / Rope It Over Radio. Ow, my cat just scratched me. That kind of hurt. 646-381-4990 is the number to call. If you're listening to it on your phone right now in a browser, on your computer, on your iPad, wherever you're at, let's say you got to go to the grocery store. You got to pick up the kids from practice on the West Coast. I don't know how many West Coast people are listening to the show. let's say you got to go to the club, get a workout in, whatever you got to do, take the podcast with you. 646-381-4990 is the number to call. Like I said, it streams live right here under the Rope-A-Dope Radio podcast umbrella at Blog Talk. It can also be subscribed under the Rope-A-Dope Radio podcast at iTunes. Player FM is another great source. We get a lot of listens through there. You can check out the Living in Loserville podcast on Spreaker, Stitcher. Stitcher has a really good app. Tune in. You can also use TuneIn to get to iHeartRadio, or not iHeartRadio, but Spotify. Speaking of Spotify and iHeartRadio, we're also, the Living in Loserville podcast is available on the Grueling Truth Sports Podcast Network. That's available everywhere, including iTunes, and you can stream it on Spotify as well. Head on over to thegruelingtruth.net. That's thegruelingtruth.net. They got basketball, they got football, they got boxing, they got baseball. They got everything in between. Head on over to thegruelingtruth.net. You can read an article. I do weekly college picks for basketball now. Was football, now basketball season. You can listen to the podcast right there as well. And while you're at it, place a book. I got a great sponsor over there, mybookie.ag. That's mybookie.ag. I'm going to go ahead and bring in my co-host, Aaron, and check his temperature, see what's going on. What's going on, Aaron? How you doing, buddy?
I'm good, buddy, man. How you doing? It's trying to get through this winter, a little day-by-day type of thing going on. But, yeah, let's talk about the Sweet Cat and Wiggins. Both had pretty good games respectively, and each team kind of won some and lost some. And we get to go check in on Buckets here this week and see how he's doing. So, yeah, looks like a pretty good week coming up here for Minnesota basketball.
Yeah, I heard Buckets has got a problem with the offense. No way. He wants more pick and roll. He wants more isolation ball. I can't believe it. Can you believe Butler has a problem with the offense? I never would have guessed it. He seems like a company guy.
Yeah, it's a real shock. You know, you just knew that when he got to Philadelphia, things were going to flare up. It's just a matter of time. And now they're drawing comparisons to how he was here last year, and problems with the big center there, and problems with the coach, and he's not getting the ball the way he likes it. Boo-hoo-hoo, Buckets. That's what we knew, and that's what they get. And hopefully we can get Covington back here and make that deal look a little bit better for us.
Yeah, that is the key. That is the key. And, you know, they're still, I think, third or fourth in the East, so we're going to kind of take a gander every once in a while to see how they're doing out there. But who really gives a crap anyway? Before we get into Cat and Wiggies and the 2-1 stretch and all that stuff, we got to talk about Josh Okogie. Now, Okogie got some playing time early because Buckets had to rest his soreness. The guy played 152 minutes a game last year, but somehow he was sore at the beginning of this year. Go figure. But Okogie got playing time early and then didn't. Then he just kind of fell off the map there for a while. Started getting some minutes mostly because of Teague and Rose's injuries. That's another thing, too. With Teague, Rose, and Covington out, it's been a little rough. It's been a little rough, but I think, you know, what we've seen with Tyus and what we've seen with Okogie, both of them in the starting lineup as well, it's been paying off in some ways, too. I think it'll make us deeper in general, but let's talk about Okogie in the starting lineup since we're getting a really good look. You know, his impact, some of the things that he brings as far as just 110% hustle and just, I'm getting on the floor, I'm running over here, oh, you beat me, no, you didn't, I'm caught right up with you. He's kind of a spaz on defense, and I love it. Sometimes he can be in that their sixth gear too much on offense where you're like, whoa, take a breath, take a dribble, take a breath, dude. But other than that, I'm really liking what I see out of this rookie. Now, lately, the shooting numbers have gone up a little bit, especially in the starting lineup. In fact, the last two games, he's really produced some good stuff. I'll say this, I think his overall effort when it compares to Wiggins is what a lot of people see. He can play in the NBA just off that. You can just see it the minutes he got early, even though there weren't a lot. You could just see he belonged. I think he gets a break, one, because he's a rookie, and two, because, like I said, the effort that is just so evident compared to I just woke up from a late afternoon nap. Wiggins, and that's, don't get me wrong, December, he's really building on his December so far in January, but back to Okogie, the shooting percentage obviously has to come up, and it will. I mean, Michael Jordan came in the league, couldn't shoot from the outside, ended up being a pretty good shooter out there. I think he'll figure that part out, especially from three. Sometimes he'll go 0-5 or 0-6, but then he'll get a couple in a row. What are your thoughts on Okogie in the starting lineup? What impact has he had, and just overall at this juncture, since we're basically at the halfway point of the season, which is pretty crazy, man. Now that I think about it, we're already at the halfway point.
Yeah, my thoughts on Okogie are, we got hit by the injury bug a little bit at the point guard position, and Jones has been playing well in there, and without Teague, it's been a little bit difficult, but I think he's come back a little bit now. So Josh had a pretty good game against the Pelicans, and their win there, 17-5-2, which is, if you could get that every night, that's kind of what you're looking for out of him, especially with what he offers on defense. The shots, they're going to come and go a little bit. He's a rookie, and, we hope he doesn't hit that wall coming up, but he hasn't really gotten a lot of time under Tibbs. He didn't play as much as any of us would have liked to have seen him play. Now that we're getting to see him a little bit more, seems to be like kind of what you said about he needs to work on his jump shot. I think a lot of that's nerves, too, coming into the league, but he can get to the rim. He's shown that. He can dunk the ball. He's got a lot of hustle defensively, which you like to see. I just like to see hustle on defense in general from anybody, especially in that league, where it's just you don't see that much, and it's good to see that. You can really set yourself up and set yourself in a different position than other players if you show the ability to and the want to go and play defense. So I think his energy is a lot of it. Saunders is kind of using him in a spot mode. I know he's got him in the starting lineup now, but I could see him being a six-man type of player, kind of overall evolving into something like Oladipo, in the best-case scenario. So I think it's a good find that they got in the draft, one of the good things that Tibbs left, and he's just been playing really well. You just got to get a little bit more consistent in the run of the offense and knowing what he's doing and maybe pass up some shots that aren't so great. But I think overall we're seeing a pretty good product in what is Josh Okogie.
Think so too, man. I like you said, his hustle. I think he'll calm down a little bit on the offensive side. Sometimes he doesn't know if he should shoot, or then he goes to the rack, but then he can't, and you're just like, well, what happened? Other times he's real smooth, and he's definitely, he's not necessarily hesitant. But yeah, I think you're right. He'll figure that out. He was a pretty good shooter, I'd say a really good shooter coming out of Georgia Tech. So we'll see. Obviously, like I said, in the intro, the last time we talked, the coach got fired. A lot of the, talk was about that. We ended up winning on the road in Oklahoma City. And Andrew Wiggins, who had a pretty damn good December, coming off that 5-game stretch where he was just garbage. I mean, hot, smelly garbage. It was the worst stretch of his career, probably the worst basketball he's ever played in his life, including, grade school. But December, he got it going again, and he's really, being aggressive. Sometimes, we have Rose and we have other scorers as well. Now that Butler's gone, his scoring is going to go up, and it has, but we still have other scorers. So we're really worried about, hey, if you give us 18 or 20 some night, what else did you do? And we're starting to see the 8 rebounds, the 7 rebounds. We're starting to see the assist, knock on wood. We're just starting to see more and more and more. Now that 40-point 10 boards, and maybe the 10 boards is just as impressive. We really needed all 40 of those points in that game on the road at Oklahoma City. I don't take a ton out of that because he was already coming in hot of that game. And not only that, but he was averaging, I think, the last 3 or 5 games, something like that, against OK City. He was averaging like 26. And that's because, once again, when he has to take on the real deal guy, he shows up. He just shows up. And Paul George, obviously, one of the leading vote getters right now. I shouldn't say vote getters because they're not voting, but they're the number one defensive team in the league, and he's their best defender, or at least second best, George. And he always plays well against Harden and George and all those guys. So that didn't really shock me, but I like seeing that 10 rebounds, no doubt about that. As far as the game goes, we grinded it out. It was one of the funner games that I recall this year to watch. Maybe that 50-point game by Rosie was funner or whatever, just to see Rose go off like that. I almost called him Jalen. Rose. I said it. I said Jalen. Derek. Maybe that was a little funner or whatever, but they grinded that game out. Ryan got his first win, Ryan Saunders I'm speaking of, and then they went on to Dallas. And they were down in that game a large chunk of it, did, rally down the stretch. They opened the second half, I think, with like a 13-2 run. You could see Cat was just going off. No doubt about it. I mean, he was really playing well. So was who's that dude, Doncic or whatever his name is? That dude had a hell of a game at half. It was like 15-7 and 7 just at half. Ultimately, he got that dagger step back 3. He was like 1 of 7 or 1 of 8 when he hit that damn shot too. That tells you he's a shooter. But we did kind of tighten it up. But then Dallas would go on another run. And I think I have some game notes here. A 7-0 run pushed it to 10 points with 5 minutes left in the third. You saw Okogie and Wiggins really step up in the stretch of that fourth quarter to stay there. They were still down 8, 5 minutes left. But they did take the lead on a 12-2 run with 3 minutes left. 15-5 after Rose came off the bench. It was tied at 107. With 2:35. I mean, this thing game all the way down to the wire. Cat especially was shining late. But like I said, man, we just got hit with that dagger, and then on our side, Rose could have shot a 3. Saric, definite. Dario should have taken the 3. You could tell that he's struggling with this shot from the outside because he should have taken that 3, man. I do remember Josh having a little issue with a turnover after a steal from Gibson that could have done it. It was just one of those games where you're like, okay, it is what it is. We lost. They hit a shot at the end. We didn't play great the whole game. I did like how we stayed in it. And then we rested. But the cool thing is that was Friday night. Came back on Saturday and got the win against New Orleans, who was basically – right where we are at in the standings. I think we're a game, as of tonight, we're a game and a half out of that 8th spot. I think the Lakers are holding down that spot just barely. They're on a losing streak ever since Bronny went out. Cat sprained his ankle, but he looked fine. Looked really fine in that Saturday game the night before. We did rest Rose, which makes a lot of sense on back-to-backs coming off that ankle injury. Ugly start to that game, though. The Wolves were like 0-6 from the 3. Really ugly start on both sides, really, in that New Orleans game. Tyus did play well off the bench, got 8 quick points, hit a couple of 3s. But we were turning the ball over left and right, down 49-37. Then there was a Luol Deng sighting, and he hit a couple of 3s. That was nice, man. It was like, okay. But then we went on a run, and we had the lead. But, Anthony Davis in company, he had 21 points, I believe, at half. Cut the lead all the way to 2. Cat was just a rebound machine, man. 14 and 15 at half, and he ended up with, 27 boards, which is the most by anybody this year. And I think he got 3 or 4 rebounds. Teague was playing like crap. He came back a couple of games. This is his second or third game back. I don't remember. But first game back or second game back, he was pretty good. He did have 10 assists, but it was kind of like he just wasn't in the flow of things. You could see Josh Okogie closed the third quarter really strong. Kind of, that game really was pretty even down the stretch in the second half. Dario came up with some meaningful minutes, which was nice because, coming off that mistake late in the game with Dallas, it was nice, for him to get it back. And then before you know it, Cat hit a 3, Tyus drove for a layup, and we never looked back. I think we got pushed to 5. Cat got a really big block, I think his 4th block on a Davis attempt. And you know what I liked about him playing great in that game is usually Davis and really a couple of different former Boogie Cousins and that other long, lanky dude who plays for Sac right now. I'm drawing a blank, but he was a really good defender for Kentucky. My point is, big man, especially big men from Kentucky, usually eat his lunch. We saw him getting his lunch, dinner, and breakfast ate against Houston, against a pretty damn good big, but nothing that he shouldn't be going back, at. That we held them to 17 in the fourth quarter. That was impressive. So overall, a good stretch. 2-1. How did you feel about some of these games? The Dallas game, it seemed like we just kept fighting back, and then when we got a hold of the game, we just made some key mistakes down the stretch. But it was nice to come back and get a W the very next night.
It was a nice week in general, just, with the transition in the team and kind of got the new coach and maybe a little different system, kind of running the ball a little bit more, not so regimented in what they do. So 2-1 for the week I thought wasn't bad considering everything that went down the week before. But, you kind of find yourself, here we are at 20-22, kind of, right around 500 midway part of the season. And the guys are starting to pick up a little bit. Towns and Wiggins are getting better box scores and starting to look like, especially Wiggins, he's a little bit more active and he's starting to, come to life a little bit. And you kind of wonder, what's going to motivate him? Is it, great opponents? Because if that's the case, just put him on the best player every night and let him go to town and see if that motivates him. But
right.
It's hard to kind of see that keep going for him. And you want to see that continue because I think it really helps the team. And, we got a couple injuries here. I think Covington's a big loss at the moment, especially trying to work into the new things that we're doing. So hopefully he can get back, on time and help us out there. The Mavs game, like you said, they just kind of kept lingering along and, fighting back and finally get a grip on it and then let it go again. So some of that might be a little bit of a learning curve. Maybe that's something with the coaching that, a wrinkle that wasn't seen before got thrown in. But overall for the week, you really ran it down pretty well game by game of what's going on. Really impressed by Towns. He's been the steady one now, and he's really starting to sort of develop into that every night type of player like KG was, where you can just expect, 20 and 15 or 20 and 10. Now, he's not really there yet, but he's starting to build toward that. We need that second and third guy to come up, and it doesn't have to be the same third guy every night, but I expect the second guy to be Wiggins every night. And, 40 points against the Thunder is nothing to laugh at, but at the same time, you go to the next game, you're doing 17 points, and then after that, you're at 18 points. So what's the difference there? Is it defensively what they're doing to you? Is it something that he can do for himself? I think that's really going to be the difference. That and playing defense, the way Wiggins plays, is going to be kind of the tale of the season. And, it's starting to look like he's starting to generate a little bit of go, a little bit of energy. He's nowhere near where Koji is. And, I think you can find different guys to come in and fill that other spot. So, for the week, I thought it was as good as you could get for that week. Could have beat the Mavs. We were real close. I would have been 3-0 on the week, and that would have been pretty impressive. But, they just need to keep building and keep going. I kind of like what Saunders is doing, just kind of getting the ball out, being a little bit more loose, playing a lot more players, and just kind of being a little bit more free with everything. But at some point, you're going to have to get the game plans down. You're going to have to learn, what other players can do. And so I think that overall, pretty good week for everybody. And I think that, going forward into Philly and the Spurs and the Suns, it's a good place to maybe, get yourself figured out and start to make up a little bit of ground here in the Western Conference.
Yeah, and it'll be interesting to see how much more, especially when we get everybody back, like you said, Covington. Will he play the bench more? Combinations, the potential different combinations. We actually saw a Dario Gibson combination for a moment. We got some Band-Aid minutes out of a guy who's barely even played a meaningful minute, a veteran who came in there, hit some shots, played some defense. That's something you really didn't see. He was really only getting slop time. So, and actually, Aaron just dropped, so hopefully I can get him back on. Otherwise, I can make it work on my phone. Hopefully, he'll just call back here. But, Rose is back now. Teague was playing pretty good at his last game, 10 assists, but really looked pretty crappy. They're definitely missing Covington's intensity. And it's kind of meshing up the rotations minorly, although it's given us a good look at Tyus in the starting lineup, not just Okogie, but Tyus in the starting lineup. I wonder if that's where we're going to go, and without, with I almost called him Flip. With Ryan here, those two have a great connection, and obviously Tyus just has a connection in the franchise, and for real, he's playing well. And that's something I think we'll dive into because, do we trade Teague potentially? How many people are going to take him with that player option next year? And I see Aaron's back on, so we're good to go there. The one thing about Cat, and we're not here to nitpick, but then again we are. The last 5-6 games, the foul problems that Cat has found himself in has been a little frustrating. Now, don't get me wrong. Sometimes it's ticky-tack. Sometimes it's not his fault. But, where there's smoke, there's fire, and the guy leads the league in fouls. And last year, I didn't know this. I knew it this year. I knew he was amongst the top 5. But last year, he led the freaking league in fouls as well. Now, some of it's chasing blocks, some of it's getting out of position, some of it may be frustration on defense, whatever. But, of course, we do have to infuse into the formula, played some of the most minutes last year too. So if you play more minutes than a lot of these named star players, you might end up catching an extra foul a game, and that adds up over a season. But I really need that to decrease. Here we are asking him to be so aggressive in this, that, and the other. But then again, sometimes he can get a little over there. So that's something to keep an eye on. We just can't lose him. He's too – even if it's 4 or 5 minutes, we need him. Every available minute he can play, we need him. You know what I mean? We definitely need him. And since we're basically at the halfway point, before this week's games, since the trade, right, since the Butler trade, we were 9th in defense and 12th in offense. And I saw a little bit of both in these, 2-1 stretch here. Obviously, early on, when you look at our record, we're a game and a half out of the A spot. We probably should have beat Atlanta, coulda, shoulda, woulda with a couple of these games. We probably should be in the playoffs right now as far as, the spot. Clearly, the early season distraction with Butler, we had that 5-game losing streak. And then we also had to adjust minorly without Butler. So there, and also injuries. We have had a little bit of injury issue. When Butler's gone, all of a sudden when you lose Teague, Rose, and Covington, or a combination of those guys any given night in the last couple of weeks, that's been tough. And I think, had we had just one of those guys hurt, that would have helped. So we still have time to turn this thing. It's not like we need to turn this way around. Considering where we were last year, yeah, we need to turn it around if we want to try to get to that third spot near the end of the year. Of course, ultimately we didn't get the third spot because Butler got hurt, but we should be in a better spot. Right now it's like the battle of 500. Can we get to 500? And if we get to 500 as a team, it'll be the latest in a season that we've ever gotten back up to 500. We've already done that this year too, which is pretty scary in a reason why we call it living in Loserville. In fact, in a Facebook group for the Timberwolves, someone made a comment about the podcast name. They said, the name itself it turns me off from listening. You should name it something else. And then I said, I respect your opinion. You shouldn't judge a book by its cover, but I respect it. But, we're just realistic. Loserville, that's where we live. Get over it. It is what it is. But I think that maybe that person thought it was just going to be a rant, negativity, Barrero type stuff all the time. Not that Barrero's always on he rants a lot and he's negative a lot. So yeah, we're not overly critical. We're not fanboys either though. We're not going to sit up here and just be homers. Now we're homers. We're just not fanboy, blind yourself homers. But kudos, obviously I was going to say kudos to that person to express his opinion about the show. I wanted to mention that. And we kind of had a little back and forth, and it was cool. It wasn't a back and forth negative like on Facebook or Twitter sometimes. But, the show the title had to have done something to you if it made you comment. So think about it like that. But anyway, when you look at it, where was I? Oh, when you look at it, there is some coulda, woulda, shouldas right now. We should have a better record. We've had some adversity through the Butler stuff and through injuries. However, we have, when you look at the rest of the schedule, we're in the top 5 for hardest schedule. We're actually 4th right now. Now that can change in a month because obviously it comes down to what we like how those other teams do, and some of those teams may falter, and all of a sudden your win-loss opponent level is not as big as it was or whatever. But so far, so good. If we could get to the playoffs, I got a question for you, Aaron. If we get to the playoffs, right, do we bring back Saunders? Do we bring back Saunders if we get to the playoffs? Because I think we've gone to 3 games or maybe 4 out of that place, but we've been lingering in that 2-game stretch or, 2-game separation. Do you think it's pretty much a foregone conclusion if we get into the playoffs, without Jimmy, like we had last year, that Saunders would get the job? Or do you still think that we'd be kind of trying to keep him on the squad but bring in more of a veteran coach? What's your thoughts halfway through the season? Long way away, obviously.
Well, I think we've learned with this franchise that nothing is a foregone conclusion. So, could go down the tail of tape of all the mishaps and blunders, and even this year, and it by itself has brought us enough activity to where you can definitely name the show that it is, or the name that it is. And so, you shouldn't pay too much attention. People have their opinions as far as that's concerned. But, I think it matters most, yes, if we make the playoffs, but, maybe seeding. If we get in as an 8 seed, I don't think that's anything, because they're probably going to be, 46 and 43 or 46 and 44. So It depends, I think, most likely on if you move yourself up to the 6th seed and above. I think, yeah, for sure, you got to bring him back. That means you had a pretty good record. That means that a lot of problems that we're facing now will have gotten solved or at least band-aided for the time. I think there's a lot more to come. I'm not going to say there's going to be a lot of trades, but I think there'll be a trade or two. I don't really know which player or how that's going to work out, but I think there'll be some personnel movement in there. It depends on how that's perceived. With Glenn, it's hard to tell because Glenn's pretty provincial, and if he really likes Saunders, it doesn't really matter the record. If he likes what he sees or how he feels about the squad, I think that also. So let's change the question. Maybe should he be brought back, and if he makes the playoffs? And I guess you got to look and see what's out there. If there's a coach out there that's available that you think can come in and do better, then obviously you would want that to be done. But long-winded answer: if you make the playoffs, will Saunders be back? I'm going to say yes. I think it's going to be hard to get him out of that job if he makes the playoffs, 8 seed, 6 seed, whatever. I think in order to have everybody on board, though, he's going to need to get that up to a 6 seed or higher to have everybody behind him going forward. And I'd like to see him do that. But I think we're looking at question for you. This next month of the season, probably January 15th to February 15th, are probably going to tell the tale of this season. Now, if they go on a nice stretch here and get above 500 with a little cushion and look like they're in some playoff contention, that'll make that last few months of the season go by a little bit faster and with a little bit more excitement. But let's take another look. Let's say they go down and somebody goes down to an injury or not, or Wiggins goes back to taking his naps, and we go down way under 500. Will Saunders make it through the season?
I liked what you did to that question with the should too. That's a good call. If we go a good chunk under 500, I do see us trying to move Teague and maybe some other parts. I wouldn't doubt. I really like the way Gibson's playing, and you know what? He's added an outside shot to his game, and it just seems like you can give him the ball and he'll score in the post almost every time, and he just gets the key rebound, the key steal, whatever. If he, as long as they're not like in the 5th spot or 6th spot, and then they go on a losing streak and they just maybe just tiptoe in, Now, last year it made a little more sense of how they backed in because of the Butler thing, missing him, key component, obviously. If that wasn't the case and we weren't missing a bunch of bodies and we backed in and just kind of shit on ourselves the last, 3 weeks or something, then maybe he doesn't. I do agree as far as bringing Ryan back. God, I keep saying Flint. That's the second time. Ryan back. Then there is a question mark there if he does make it, especially if it's a battle. I mean, if it's a battle for the 6 to 8 or like last year, from 3 to 8, it was a 2-game gap. Then if you get into the 7th or 8th, it's not the end of the world as far as like, oh, he backed in. I think you're right, though. If he makes the playoff, I think he's in. If they start to lose kind of bad, I think we'll see more trades. I think, I agree with that angle, but I think he'll be here. I do think we'll give him this second half to do his thing. And like you said, I agree. I mean, a lot can be made because there's some game from now until mid-February, like you said. I mean, the next 2 games are going to be tough on the road, Philly. And Embiid just loves playing Karl-Anthony Towns, and he goes after him on social media and everything. So it'll be a nice game to measure up and see where he is mentally, coming in hot as ever. So we'll see there. And then San Antonio, who's kind of rebirthed a little bit, looking better than they did last year at this point anyway. That's a tough game. It's a home game, but it's tough. Got a nice little gap from Tuesday to Friday. That is nice. But then we got back-to-back against Phoenix, and we should have beat Phoenix. You know what I mean? So we need both these games. I don't care if they're home and road. We need both those games. The Laker game right now, we'll see where Bronny's at. Otherwise, give us that game. And then we got to win one of those Utah games. I mean, we really start – you're right. Then we got Utah in back-to-back games. Then we got Denver. We have New Orleans again. The Clippers who are playing good. Houston that's playing good. I mean, Milwaukee. We start to really ramp up here as it goes down. Like I mentioned, the fourth hardest schedule. So I do think we'll see a lot more trades, or maybe not a lot, but T, Gibson, whoever else, if we do kind of fall apart and falter down the stretch. It'll be really interesting to see tomorrow night, man. Wiggins and Butler is going to be funny because I mean, it's going to be like the practice probably. That's what he's going to try to do. He's going to try to get in his head. It'll be really interesting, and I think we'll see an aggressive Wiggins, and we'll see, man. The one thing about Wiggins that's still lingering, I never believed he was a shooting guard because he's a good dribbler, but not a shooting guard, point guard, off the dribble guy like you need to be for quite some time, really, at those positions. Because you see him get picked a lot. Butler will probably pick him apart when it comes to that. The 2 dribbles, 3 dribbles, and then somehow the ball goes awry, looking like me, but except it'd be off my foot. Nobody would be stealing it. I may get by the guy, but the ball will go right off my foot because I can't dribble. Didn't grow up dribbling, just don't know how to at even a near decent level, to be honest with you. But I'm really looking forward to these games coming up, man. If we could beat, we got to beat, I'd say 3-1. 2-2 we need to be, but 3-1 would be really nice. But that back-to-back Phoenix games with the offensive talent that they have, that'd be nice if we could get those, dude. That would be great, man. But long-winded, yeah, I do think that Saunders will stay regardless. If he makes it in the playoffs, then I think he probably stays, as the full-time. Anything else Timberwolf related? Because we do have to get to our golden Gophers who are 1-1 this week as well.
I really want to see. I think tomorrow's game, the Philly game, nonetheless, is really going to be the sign. If you want to watch the season in one game, I think that you really pay attention to what happens in Philly coming up here. You had a guy come in, this bucket thing. I'm going to make this quick. I got a long ramble in my brain kind of. But, will Wiggins respond to what happened with Butler? And what will that tell us? Will he come out and just lay 40 and tell, Jimmy to go sit down? That would be awesome. I don't know if that'll happen, but that would be awesome if it happened. Just tear Butler up and put it to bed for going forward for the rest of the season. Chances that happen, I'd say, are 50-50. Just depends. But in order to see how this team reacts, if there's ever going to be a game that's going to fire this team up, to come out and play and show their ability, this would be it. And so I really am going to be interested to see how they come out in that game. If they come out hot, if they come out cold, maybe maybe they'll come out a little bit flat and then come back. But they really need to show resolve. I've watched the last 3 games since Saunders has come in, and I haven't quite seen it. I've seen little building blocks of being a competitive NBA basketball team as far as their mindset and being able to deal with adversity and come back. And I thought the Dallas game was a really good thing of that, just showing that keep pushing back, go grab the lead. Now they lost in the end, but you want to see them making runs to come back and not just letting guys in the fast break, not stopping the ball, things like that. So you really want to see, have they come together as a team, and that'll kind of tell you what Saunders has done or hasn't done. Going on to Gopher basketball, it was a pretty good week. I thought that the Maryland game was really, you said last week there's always going to be a stinker, somewhere in the season. I'm really hoping that was the stinker. They came out in the first half, played really well, had an 8-point lead, I think 8 points going in halftime. And then the second half, they just completely broke down and couldn't make free throws, and I think the nerves got to him, and, one thing added up to the next, and, one missed free throw becomes 8 missed free throws. And the most interesting thing about that, it was Coffey was missing him, Murphy was missing him. The guys that usually are pretty steady were missing those. Now, I noticed that Maryland did go to the zone, which kind of confused the Gophers a little bit, and I think helped Maryland get back in that game a little bit. Then the Gophers figured that zone out, and Rutgers tried to play it, and the Gophers went ahead and ran Rutgers. So, I thought it was a good week for the Gophers. It's good to see Coffey kind of continue to lead the team. Let's go on and talk about the Gophers a little bit here.
Yeah, they shoot, my goddamn cat. I thought oh man. Anyway, I'm sorry. This cat is just driving me crazy. They always know where to hide just in time for the podcast. I check all their available, go-tos, and they find a different one, and I'm just like, how do you keep doing this? You're right, though. Back on topic, that Maryland game, if you look at – it was the second half. I mean, the game itself, but especially the second half, we're looking – I actually screenshot this second half with 12 minutes left. Tie game, 54 all. And the game trends were 17 ties and 5 lead changes. So, it was, a grinded-out game. And you're right, the second half just fell apart, shooting and those missed free throws. And we mentioned this last week, but I don't think we stressed it enough. You're right. I'm glad that you pointed out the guys that were missing usually make, so we're not as bad. But the free throws in general under Pitino, and especially Papa Pitino, if you look at his Louisville teams, they were garbage at the free throw line. And that's one of the things that maybe held them out of Final Fours a couple of those times, even though they went to some and, of course, won some. But it's something that if we're not good on the outside at times, and we talked about how Coffey and McBrayer have to maybe not shoot threes at a high rate percentage-wise, but they got to come up when we really need them. I think they've done that thus far in the Big Ten in this season. But yeah, if you look at our wins and losses, the shooting differences, 46 from the field in wins and 37, and from the three, you got 36% in wins. And as a team, 36% is pretty good. And 19, in the losses. And so that's going to be something that's going to be there. The outside shooting in the free throws, and it really matters. I just hope matters who's at the line. I was just to complete that sentence, but I really hope that we don't get too worried about the free throws too, and just be like, you know what, I'll just pull up from here. It's like, no, go back, get to that free throw line. We need it. So yeah, that game just got out of control late, and it was like second half, 6 minutes left, and they just never looked back. In fact, and then rebounding, those two big bodies in Maryland. Maryland was ranked in the non-conference, got beat from somebody that I don't think they should have got beat from, lost their ranking, and I think they're 5-1 in the conference. And so they're playing really good, but there's this moment, it's 64-61, 6:50 left. Bruno Fernando, just sounds like a guy that's going to get a rebound. So he missed the layup, offensive rebound. Missed the layup, offensive rebound. Missed the layup, offensive rebound, TV timeout. It's like, dude, a 3-point game, and after that it was a wrap. And there's just times where you're like, really? Arturo is actually one of the better. I think he's third in offensive rebounds. So it's not like we're horrible at offensive rebounds, but to me, those two bigs, especially Fernando, really hurt us. I mean, that's something we got to keep an eye on, because I like our bigs, but Arturo doesn't play like a 6'10" guy, if you know what I mean right now. He's starting to see some blocks and show some of that, but Murphy's not a big guy, especially on the defensive end. So when we play these bigs, we got to keep an eye on that. And I'm glad you brought up the zone because the 2-3 zone has been killing us. I think Boston College did the same thing. Washington was doing it. We just scraped out of that win. That'll be something to keep an eye on as well. But Murphy and the foul problems and just his inconsistent play needs to change. It was nice bouncing back against Rutgers. You could see Murphy actually couldn't find a shot early, but then he got to the free throw line. As a team, they shot a whole lot better from the free throw line. Good bounce back there, and shot 50% from the field. Coffey and McBrayer really showed up, on both sides of the ball. And then off the bench, Washington had a great game. He really did. Man, Coffey going to the rack, the explosive nature he goes to the rack, especially when it's like, okay, I'm going to try to dunk this, is just impressive, man. And it's nice that shoulder injury isn't lingering this year. We got some games coming up here that are pretty big. We need these games. And when you're on the road in the Big Ten, the Big Ten has some of the best road, even if it's Northwestern or some of these smaller gyms. It's still intense. And at Illinois is not as easy as it looks. Now on the surface, I don't think Northwestern or Rutgers has a win in the conference. So therefore, just off that, there are two road. Oh no, it's not a road game. What am I saying? Purdue. I'm talking Purdue. They just got a win. And I got my schedules all. Penn State. Jesus Christ. What the hell's going on? I'm already in February on the schedule. That's how much I'm looking ahead. But I was right about Illinois, but the Penn State, both those teams don't have a win in conference. So what that means is we have to beat them. If we want that 4th, 3rd, 5th, 6th spot somewhere in there, basically, if we want to go to the damn tournament, these are the games we got to win. And we let that game against Maryland in the second half, especially down the stretch, just soak away for poor play. So we need these two games. That way we can really go on that 3-1 stretch we were talking about. And then, we're sitting at 3-2. We're 4th in the Big Ten. But as we know, come January 22nd, that schedule really tightens up. Really looking for 2 wins this week here, Aaron.
Yeah, you need these two. You're absolutely right about that because what's coming up this next week after that, you need to get tuned up and ready to play those two squads, Michigan on the road and Iowa at home. Those are two tough teams. Michigan in particular is ranked number 2 right now. It's going to be very, very difficult. You need to get your crap together this week. Now, you're right. Illinois is not going to be as easy as the record seems, but I think you need to go down there and you need to show you can win on the road. You're going to see a lot of that zone, I assume, until you can get it figured out. And I think the real problem with that zone right now is what we're doing at point guard. Washington's a little too green still, and Coffey's not really a point guard, and we don't really have any good point guard play. We've got to get that figured out going into Michigan, or maybe even before that. McBraer's the 2. He can't really play the 1 spot. And so you've got Stahl who can play. He's a calming, settling guy. He might be your best option in a tough game to kind of keep everything, under control and run the point guard the way it should be ran. It'd be nice to see Washington get a little better. He had some great minutes against Rutgers, 14 minutes, had 8 points, 8 big points, had a big 3. Really changed that game, I thought, really brought us that win against Rutgers. Maryland, that second half getting outscored 48-27. You're not going to win that.
Yeah.
But, Illinois is a tough team. They are what they are. It's a road game, and you've got to go and win that game because then you can hit Penn State. I think is a little bit less. They're at home. They'll be coming to our place at the barn. So, that's a game that you're going to win, I think, if you come out and play well. But then that following week is Michigan and Iowa. And, Iowa's ranked 23rd, and they're tough always. I don't care if Iowa was ranked 76th. Yep. It's going to be a tough game. Iowa plays tough no matter home or away. So you're right about Murphy a little bit, and I want to talk a little bit, too, about the bigs. We don't use Motts much. I thought maybe we could have used Motts a little bit more against Maryland. just because of the size. He's kind of
the length,
not the quickest guy in the world, but the length. Yeah, you need the length. And Murphy's kind of that, he's an interesting player because he's not the quickest guy, and he's not that tall. I think he's 6'6", maybe 6'7".
Yeah.
Maybe even shorter than that. He could be 6'5", and he's playing in the front court, which kind of makes it, he's obviously not quick enough to play a guard position, maybe in a small forward role, but, he's a good rebounder, and it's good to have him in there, and he's got a lot of experience and stuff, but, he's a matchup thing where you got to go, and he's seen a lot of doubles, and, this might be the first time he's seeing that consistent amount of doubles. I know he got doubled a little bit last year when everybody was injured, but now it's starting to matter. I thought early in the season he did a good job passing out of the double teams. Now he's getting a little bit flustered. He doesn't know where they're coming from and where to get the ball. Outside shooting's also been a little bit of an issue. Even Kelcher's not hitting the shots that I thought he would hit, so I think we need to work on that a little bit. I think the free throw thing's going to come and go. I think they had a bad night, and they came back against Rutgers and shot pretty good from the free throw line. So, they're going to improve the outside shooting and maintain, a defensive presence, because that's what's going to carry you through on the road. Defense travels, and that's what you're going to need to see even against teams like Illinois and teams like Penn State. Your defense can run you through those games, so you need to be strong at it and get yourself ready to play Michigan. You might not beat Michigan, but you got to show well. I think you got to not get blown out. I think you got to play, within 10 points of Michigan, and then you got to beat Iowa. I think you just, for your program and for the year. So, going forward, It's going to be sort of an easy week and then a really tough week. And I'd like if they use the mindset of using that easy week to get ready for the tough week. But, I think they'll beat Illinois, and I think they'll beat Penn State. And then you start a pretty nice little run of the next few teams.
Yeah, and it's going to be a dog chase the whole. It's going to be a rough one the whole time, because you can look at Michigan and Michigan State 6-0, Maryland's 5-1. That's a tad bit of a surprise there, but then it's Minnesota 3-2, Wisconsin 3-2. Purdue 3-2, who actually look like they're finding their groove. They got that Edwards point guard who's scoring a lot, but some of their pieces that they've had in the last chunk of years, they're gone now. So they're trying to figure it out. I'm sure they'll improve. You got Nebraska, who's been ranked and unranked, kind of, both. They got a big game actually tonight against Indiana, I believe. They're 3-3. Indiana is 3-3. Iowa's 3-3. They're ranked, like you said. And Ohio State was ranked, and actually they got up pretty high, and now they've gone on a losing game in a row. And so you are going to have those weeks where we're going to come back and be like, yeah, they lost both games. Now they need to win. You'd like to not lose back to back, but you got to make sure you take care of that third and fourth. And I like the example so we lose to Michigan, the example you gave. Okay, but then cool. The difference is this year we got to win that Iowa game then. You got to follow that back up and try to limit the back-to-back losses. That'll really help this year. Right now we're sitting pretty, but you got 9 teams that are all right there, and 5 of them are ranked. So, the ACC probably has the better teams at the top probably, but this is probably the deepest, conference. So it is going to be a grinded out, especially with the extra 2 games now, 20 games, which helps us though, man. You got that many opportunities too. So, and when you look at it, on the surface, you think, we had one tough game. Well, no, hold on, because there was those December games. You kind of forget about those December games, the way they got to fit it in early December, 2 games in a row. Get our ass kicked by Ohio State. That's what we can't do on the road, like you said, against Michigan. But so we started with Ohio State, Nebraska, and then at Wisconsin and Maryland. So, and then Rutgers, obviously. So to go 3-2 out of that, because you can kind of, sure, we lost to Maryland, okay, but did we really count, Wisconsin on the road as a win? Probably not, if we're being honest, and we're not a bunch of fanboys, homers. Now, we're homers, but like I said, we're just not fanboys. This is going to be that back and forth the whole game, man. This is going to be interesting. I'm glad you brought up, and I thought it was a good point. about point guard. Obviously, that dude that we thought we may have this year on the transfer from Pitt would have been nice because he can, handle the ball a little bit too. But I think we're just going to have to make it work. I really like what I'm seeing from Washington, man. The Jelly Fam layup came out on display, but he's just making the correct basketball play, and we need him to keep doing that this year and keep his confidence level up and show that he's still a part of this program just because it hasn't necessarily gone as well as he probably wanted so far. The guy can be a difference maker. In his junior and senior year, because of his size, I really want to see those 2 years, man. I really think he can be a difference maker and just be a spark plug. One of those, college basketball players that smack the frickin' ground when they play defense and they rally the crowd and everybody loves this little dude that just goes and gets it, and he just brings that New York City basketball feel to it. And that's what we're getting out of him right now for the most part in the last probably 6 games that he's played. He did have that one stinker, but, there was plenty of stinkers to go around. Anything at all to close the show with, Aaron?
I was just saying we missed kind of that. Washington had a good game against Rutgers. Also had a really bad technical. But, I kind of want to see that. I liked seeing that. He lobbed the ball at the dude's head and got a technical foul for it. A little, everybody got a little up in the air. But we needed somebody on this team to do that. These kids in Minnesota, it's just nice. We can't be a nice basketball team and expect to go down to Michigan and win. We need someone with some fire. So, you didn't, chuck it at the dude's head. You just kind of let the dude know that, I'm back here. And you want to see that out of somebody on that squad, and you kind of see it from Coffey a little bit in how he plays, but they don't see a lot of edge, and it's kind of what I'm looking for is like somebody has to be a bulldog on that squad. And same with the Timberwolves, really. There's someone has to be a bulldog on that squad and to get the other guys to be bulldogs. And I'd like to see Washington, maybe that be his role, maybe an instigator, maybe a kind of guy that, kind of gets people fired up or gets a little edgy at some. We need a little bit of that on both squads, I think. So, it'll be nice to see if that emerges for the Timberwolves and who can be that. Maybe Covington, but he's out right now. And so we'll see. I don't know. Going to the next week,
if you get a win for the Wolves. Is that guy, but we don't have that guy right now without Covington. That's a good point on both squads. That's a good point with Isaiah Washington being that short version of Bill Laimbeer. Man, I'll take it.
Yeah, I'm not going to say we're soft or anything. I'm just saying we need some bulldogs.
Right.
Minnesota sports has kind of been a bunch of nice people doing nice things and losing nicely, and it just I don't want to see that anymore. So to wrap it up, I think, Chris, 2 really big games for both squads. Big game for the Illinois game's big for the Gophers because they got to win it, and they got to show that they can go on the road and win a game that they're supposed to win. And it'll be interesting to see the Wolves go to Philly and meet buckets again. And I hope they come out fired up. I hope Wiggins puts up 40 and lets Jimmy know just what kind of player he is.
That would be something. Well, that about does it for the Living in Loserville, Minnesota Basketball Weekly podcast, focusing in on the Timberwolves and the Gophers. All right, well, we'll be back next week. We'll see where we stand with both squads. Until then, enjoy the week and weekend of games. Peace. We're out of here.
Peace.
Once you become the world champion, I believe that you feel you have the upper hand. So now, as you fight, let's say you fight 4 or 5 years of straight survival, the bullshit, the holdback, and when you become the world champion, you're like, you know what, I made it. Now I'm going to show you it's business. So I'm going to get every dollar worth of what I deserve. Why? Because I'm the world champion.